It's incredible to see, such a future unfolding in front of our eyes. Let's imagine the flying cars.
Flying vehicles pose a new series of challenges. If you want to fast track it, if you want to fast track the change towards EVs, then there is only one answer in my opinion, and that is government-backed incentives. If you look at the Chinese OEMs, they continuously look for advancements in technology to gain the upper hand. What AI is capable of is so far beyond our imagination.
Hello, today we have a fantastic guest, Maxence, who is working in a company, XPENG, automotive company. And today we're gonna cover a lot of topics considering the flying cars, the electric cars, the different types of e-mobility, the connection of the vehicle to the world. Hopefully we will be having very interesting discussion. You are now working in the automotive industry, but you have a background in economics, in supply chain, in other areas. What actually brought you exactly to automotive?
It's actually a funny story because I knew from when I was a child, actually when I was a baby, that I was going to end up in this industry. I'm the fourth generation of my family in the automotive industry. And it all started with my great-grandfather, who started a dealership in the 50s. When I was born, you can say that quite literally, I was taken into meeting rooms in that dealership. And even though I studied different things, because I do believe that it's important to have a broad knowledge of certain things that are relevant to the industry, I always knew I was going to end up in the automotive industry. And the role I have today is of course an amazing role, but I went through a lot of different roles within the sector.
Let's probably touch the point of artificial intelligence. I mean, almost all the companies right now are trying to, speaking about it and trying to implement it with like 25-30% of the company implementing it on a full scale. And the leaders here would be, I would say, the fintech and retail probably. What about automotive? How do you assess the artificial intelligence in this area?
I do believe that AI is present in a lot more companies than we would think today. And it can go from using just ChatGPT to write certain things to a lot more. And if we look at the automotive industry, the OEM that I represent, XPENG today, they use AI in a lot of different sectors within the company. It starts with within the factory. For example, our industrial robots, they are level 4, which means that they have an AI capability of making real-time decisions that would benefit productivity. So in the morning, the worker can say, today these robots need to do this. And the robot itself can decide, if I do this now, productivity will become better. So what AI is capable of is so far beyond our imagination. And I think that a lot of companies are already using it, also in the automotive industry, but not to the level where it could be. XPENG, again, is an example of where AI is present in the factories, so in the production process, but also in vehicles themselves. We have the vehicle I drive for a European market. We have AI that can do certain things, that can control navigation, that can control your contact list, for example. But back in China, they also have a model, it's called Mona MO3, where AI also controls the ADAS. So based on what it learns from input, from data, and from just previous drives around the city, AI can make better decisions than the driver. So there are brands like XPENG who really implement it in a full scale almost. And it will make its way into a lot more vehicles than today.
But from the other hand, it possesses some of risks for the companies using them. What's, in your opinion, could have a greater impact? The potential benefits or the risks coming with that?
The risks we all know. If you look at the retail sector today, a lot of people almost lose their job because of the implementation of AI. And there is definitely a risk, but people need to be open to be reschooled into working together with AI to make sure that the future of said company is secure. So I think the benefit that AI and technology in general provides to companies will outweigh the risk, because the risk is temporary and the risk is today. Everyone is convinced that in a few years, technology and AI will be so present in our lives that it will be difficult to think of a time where we did not have it.
Today, automotive industry is not in the, let's say, top 5 industries in terms of application of AI.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is?
If you look at the Chinese OEMs, they continuously look for advancements in technology to gain the upper hand. So they look towards AI, for example, to make sure that they gain the upper hand in their home market, and automatically that will translate into success in Europe. But you have a lot of legacy brands in Europe, but also outside of Europe, where they have used the same model for the last, let's say, 100, 125 years. And it's hard to, in a short period of time, to say goodbye to your way of work for the last century. And all of a sudden need to shift gears because a few OEMs in China are doing so. But the failure to adapt will lead to, being forgotten almost as a brand. As we see the advancements coming in from China in Europe, you will see the bigger OEMs like a Volkswagen Group, like BMW, like Mercedes, Daimler, also implement AI because they will have to.
What about ADAS systems? How do you see AI would evolve and to change and to integrate itself in the ADAS system? And where do you see it is in the 3 years from now, 5 years, and 10 years from now?
Today, all the cars, basically all the vehicles that are driven around on the street, use LiDAR to control the ADAS systems and to make sure that everything is taken care of. If you use an adaptive cruise control, your LiDAR sensors will, for example, control the distance between your own vehicle and the vehicle in front of you. But it does not go beyond that. Like you have lane assist, for example, and from time to time it works together with the blind spot monitor. That will be replaced by AI. Maybe not in the next 3 years, but probably 5 to 10 years, LiDAR will be replaced by AI and by machine learning. I mentioned it before. XPENG launched an MO3 in China, and MONA stands for Made of New AI.
Yeah.
That vehicle does not have any LiDAR. Of course, legislation in China is a little bit more geared towards advancements of technology. So they have basically a 3D print of the entire city, and they know where are the sidewalks, where are traffic lights, etc., etc. And they can implement that with their AI systems and then just have continuous learning. If there are 100,000 people driving the vehicle, there are 100,000 vehicles learning from each other.
Exactly.
Which will lead to just a safer environment on the road. And that's why I believe AI will find its way into us, and it will, 3 years is a little soon, because as you probably know, the vehicles that will be released in the coming 3 years, they are already designed and they are just testing and running production. But the generation after those vehicles, I believe, will look towards AI faster than re-implementing LiDAR systems, because LiDAR is something they will have to keep on improving, but at a certain point you reach the max. You cannot go beyond. Whereas AI and machine learning, again, is a completely different story, and there you can outgrow the human capabilities.
Yeah, so basically, if I understood you correct, and I actually agree on that every new generation of vehicle will be faster and faster implementing the new technologies, including AI.
Yeah.
Just because of the learning experience from the previous generations and the technology developing itself in parallel.
Yeah.
Let's take a break. You are watching Andersen R&D channel, where we talk to people shaping the future. Our company, Andersen, collaborates with leading global brands and takes part in exciting projects across the globe. Follow us on Andersen R&D channel for further updates. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
One of the 10 cars on the road by 2030 will be close to fully autonomous. As long as I remember myself, the futuristic predictions were talking about flying cars.
Yeah.
Do you think this scenario is still realistic, actually?
Having flying cars by 2030, and again, you really have to look at a global scale.
Yeah.
It's more a legislation issue than a market issue, because XPENG will start selling their X2, which is an eVTOL, as they call it, which is a flying car, basically. And they will start selling it in roughly a few weeks in China.
Wow.
Yeah, for the prices, again, I think it translates to $250,000. But there is legislation in China. Of course, they have the city centers in China. They are so congested with traffic that it makes sense that they pass the legislations first to ease up on the traffic a bit and to look for, again, the advancements in mobility there. But flying cars is not something that is still science fiction. Like, it's actually here, and we have a prototype X2 traveling across Europe right now. So it is coming, but again, as I said, you have to look at it on a global scale. There are certain markets where it makes sense, and where the government thinks legislation-wise it can happen. And unfortunately, Europe is not among those markets today.
The most, important trend today is the electric cars. What do you think? Are there any other alternative driving systems that make sense or maybe also important?
I do believe that if you look at today, the electric is definitely there, but it's still not for everyone. Why? Because certain people have certain jobs where they need a vehicle that, for example, can tow a lot of weight, and electric vehicles, they are not up to par yet. So there today, diesel, in my opinion, is still the smartest choice. However, I do believe that all the bigger diesel vehicles, the LCVs and above, can be replaced by hydrogen vehicles in a few years. I don't think we need 5 to 10. I think that between like 3-4 years, we can have an alternative in hydrogen for the LCVs, for the people who need a big payload or whatever for their job or for their hobby. Apart from electric vehicles, towards the future, as I said, hydrogen or e-fuels in some cases, and I think it will be those three how we will go into the future. I do believe that petrol, diesel, they will be a thing of the past. And also the hybrids and plug-in hybrids, they're a good solution for the transition period. But I think they will meet their end before this decade is over, because a lot of people are looking towards the advancements also in engine technology. And if you really want to go for a greener future, you want mobility to play a big part in there, then you will have to make some decisions. And I think the decision will be go ahead with EVs, electric vehicles, hydrogen vehicles, and maybe e-fuel if possible.
In the electric vehicles, currently, obviously, the leader is China. Yeah. I mean, and the price difference between their EVs and the internal combustion engines from Europe or from US are much smaller.
Yeah.
And they have more charging stations, by the way.
Yeah.
How do you think they are able to achieve that?
They are at the source of a lot of materials today. If you look at, for example, BYD, #1 EV brand right now, but they have a very big history in making batteries, and they are still the absolute #1 battery producer of the world. And that is because, again, the source of all these materials is in or around China, and that's why they can produce new vehicles so fast, and that's why there are so many new OEMs coming from China. And also why the price in China is a lot lower than the prices here. You know, you don't have to pay for transport for these materials or whatever. So your entire chain is just lowering cost for the OEMs, and it's the entire supply chain almost is more often in-house than outsourced. And I do believe that that's why, you know, the Chinese OEMs have an advantage today, and why there is such a difference in price in their market and our markets.
What measures do you think should be applied in Europe to, you know, to make it more popular, the electric vehicles among the consumers? How we can address the issues of the consumer, like higher prices and probably, not enough availability on the market?
It's if you want to fast track it, if you want to fast track the change towards EVs, then there is only one answer, in my opinion, and that is government-backed incentives, either for the purchase of electric vehicles or for the placement of new infrastructure. Because, as you rightfully said, in China, there are superchargers that we've never even heard of, 600 kilowatts plus.
Yeah.
It's, if you see one 400 kilowatts in the European mainland, then you're flabbergasted. It's something completely new. But in China, it's very regular and it's very easy to find these. Again, if you want to fast track it, the implementation of electric vehicles, the governments in Europe and per country need to decide, do we want to back the infrastructure and do we want to back the sale of EVs? There are certain countries who had incentives. Look at Germany, for example, but then once the sale of EVs started to go up, then they stopped the incentives. So either you decide, okay, we really want to push the sale of electric vehicles, or we don't, but then you will face other consequences. A very good example is Norway, for example, where for the last 3 or 4 years, everyone wanted to buy a new electric vehicle, and we are coming to the point where the vehicles on the road, electric vehicles, are the majority of the vehicles, and it's no longer petrol or plug-in hybrid. Yeah. Why is that? One, government-backed incentives for the purchase of EVs, and the infrastructure in Norway is among the best in the world, and that's why people felt confident to buy an electric vehicle. And again, Norway's climate is even worse than a Belgian or a German climate. So, and they take the risk of buying EVs. So if they can do it, then the question is, why shouldn't the rest of the countries in the European Union be able to?
But today, you cannot ignore potential data breaches because the cars becoming more connected to the grid, and they are more, vulnerable for the potential breaches. What potential risks it brings, and what the cybersecurity measures that are essential today and will be in the future?
Is it possible that your personal information can be shared to other parties that you are unaware of? That was the risk a few years ago when the first Teslas came to the European mainland, because a lot of people were thinking, oh, I'm going to get hacked and whatever. But nowadays there is a legislation around it, and there are even trainings you can follow as a cybersecurity specialist on how to better protect the automotive industry against these cybersecurity threats. There are a lot of measurements already taken behind the scenes. There's even an ISO norm for the automotive cybersecurity. But again, it's a very real threat. And as we've seen with countless big multinational companies, even if you think you're very safe, there is always someone who will find a hole somewhere. So I think the measurements taken today are good, but we need to keep on working on top of them, because the smarter our vehicles become, the more risks they bring as well, that someone might hack into a car or cars in general. So we really need to, follow what they are doing in the multinational companies, in governments as well, and just extend that same work ethic to smart electric vehicles.
But if you speak about vehicle-to-pedestrian, it brings kind of an interesting challenge here, because again, if we are speaking about the integration of pedestrian into the vehicle, for them to be connected into the vehicles, in terms of privacy and security, brings a lot of challenges. What kind of you think the devices and processes we need to implement to make this communication happen and to make it private and secure for everyone?
Vehicle-to-pedestrian is, I believe, one of the most important things that the vehicles need to implement if we want to go to more autonomous driving systems in the future, because it's easier for a camera or a sensor to pick up a metallic sheet, for example, or a wall, than actually someone moving, a moving human, or even a moving dog or whatever. The V2, vehicle-to-load, vehicle-to-X, that's good and it will advance vehicles, but indeed, vehicle-to-pedestrian is an important part of any ADAS system. How can we improve upon it? I think, again, we are coming back to the current situation in China, where they have cameras all around. Every street corner, every house almost has a camera linked to it. And if they can start talking to your vehicle because they share the entire map of the city, then it will be even easier for your car, if it has AI implemented, to learn from those cameras and to know there's a pedestrian crossing the road, for example. I'm gonna wait, I'm gonna maybe diverge or whatever. It notifies you and it gives off warning signals. There is a pedestrian crossing from the front, from the back. But really, it will have an emergency brake, but it's still hard to notice pedestrians far ahead and not last minute and adapt the route. So it's something that OEMs need to work on. But yeah, it's an integration of a lot of things that need to come together to really ensure the safety of a pedestrian.
According to National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the V2X can, reduce the crashes by 615,000 per year. So that's the number they brought up. What are other technologies do you think that could help with preventing the road accidents?
I think that there are three technologies that, in my opinion, can even work together. So it's the V2X, this is a very important one. And within the V2X is V2C, so vehicle to car, where actually vehicles can communicate kilometers in advance, like there is a dangerous situation, and your car knows about it before you are even in the vicinity of it. The AI, again, that's communicating with the V2X, and the AI that will adapt your ADAS in the vehicle to the situation created by the V2X. So I think if you have those three systems which are communicating perfectly, then indeed I do believe the risk of an accident on the road will be so much lower than it is today, because today it is still up to the human behind the wheel to make the right decision, and to make the right decision fast enough. But if you take it out of their hands and really give it to a machine that is constantly learning and communicating with others, then I do believe that the 600K sounds like a big number, but I do believe we might get there eventually, if again those systems are communicating clearly.
Coming back to XPENG, actually, XPENG Aerot, a subsidiary of XPENG, is announced that they will start mass production by 2026 of the flying car, or the flying vehicle already. And earlier this year, it was announced that the land aircraft carrier will be, available in the last quarter of this year, even already. It's incredible to see such an advancement in this area, which was just recently been kind of from the fantastic movie or something. Yeah. So what regions are XPENG is targeting for those products? And do you anticipate the interest or possibility to introduce those cars in Europe?
We are looking towards the first reservations of our flying car, the XPENG X2 in the first phase. And indeed, the land aircraft carrier will also go into mass production. The markets that we are targeting currently are China, because legislation allows it. In the next phase, probably looking towards the Middle East, maybe because our first flight with customers was in Dubai. Yeah, so again, they are also a little bit more lenient towards changing legislation if it allows the advancement of mobility. And to answer the second part of the question, I do believe that there is an interest in Europe, but the difference between the interest and the actual implementation or distribution of our flying vehicles, between those two, there is a sea of bureaucratic mess, and again, it's legislation that needs to allow it. And I do not foresee that we will see any XPENG X2s flying around in the coming at least 5 years, unfortunately, because they are so focused on what to do with the current mobility and how to advance that I don't think they are already thinking about having flying vehicles in that same city, So I think it's still some ways away, but it will come because it's another step forward in the future of mobility. So
although flying cars seem to be kind of a natural further development of the mobility, their wide introduction brings a lot of challenges. And one of these is the existing infrastructure. If you speak about in Europe, for example, what infrastructural changes do you think needed in Europe in order to be able to, introduce the flying vehicles?
A very good but tough question, and also one that they are thinking about in on higher levels, I do believe. Infrastructural changes, as I said, you need to have some sort of standard, and the standard for which I mentioned for the V2X, for example, I think you need to have at least that same standard for flying vehicles, because flying vehicles pose a new series of challenges, and if you do not have a certain standard on which you can build upon, then you might not be able to face these challenges. Again, what do you do with certain no-fly zones for drones? Do you extend that to flying vehicles? But then again, you are skipping out on a few city centers. So I think they need to really look at their current just roadmap, if I can call it that, and try and improve upon that before they can think, okay, how can we introduce flying vehicles to our cities? I do believe that certain countries are already on that level. As I said, I think the Netherlands, for example, I think Germany, a few cities, they are already there, the Nordics as well. But I think once you go more south, and I'm speaking about my home country as well, if you're looking at Belgium, I don't believe that they are already up to par to start to even think about introduction of flying vehicles.
Do you think that there are some other, let's say, areas or applications other than personal usage for the flying cars where they can be adapted faster? Let's say maybe postal deliveries, or maybe ambulances, or maybe some other specific type of vehicles. Do you think this could be, this could brought flying cars faster before the personal usage of them?
Yeah, I do believe that postal services is one sector where they would look towards a flying vehicle sooner than other sectors. If you look towards the Amazon delivery drones in America, for example, they also do that to make sure that no driver is stuck in traffic. If you can guarantee a flying vehicle that will get from point A to point B faster than a regular vehicle, I do believe that the Amazons of this world or any postal service will look into those solutions. I do believe that the ambulance, for example, and medical transport, they will not want to take the risk right at the start, so they are not among the early adapters, but maybe in the second phase. And I do believe that taxi, public transport, they will also look towards flying vehicles because, again, you can skip out on a lot of traffic, which, of course, will better their results and whatever for the future. So
The cars are not just the cars. For many people, the car is like second home. And some people are even, right now you can buy yourself a home on the wheels. I mean, basically all these motorhomes you can see, and a lot of people like them, where you have a bed, you have a kitchen, you have, almost everything for you. And many people like this way of living and this way of travel. Do you expect somewhere in the future we could have kind of a flying homes? Not on the wheels, but the flying, where you have your bed, your kitchen, your stuff, and you can fly from one place to another. Would that be fantastic, do you think? Is there a possibility for that development?
yeah, it would definitely be fantastic. And I do believe that once there is a widespread network already of vehicles sold, of vehicles serviced, etc., I think that is a logical next step in that area of mobility. Because a few years ago, if you take, for example, the California from Volkswagen, which is a very well-known camper van, once they started to introduce the electric vehicles, everyone said, you know what, a vehicle like the California, it's very hard to electrify just because of all the amenities, the distance covered with those vehicles. But now they're coming back on that, and the California, but you have others with Ford, with Mercedes. They are starting to think about an EV camper van, and it might go into production very, very soon. So I think, again, will it be there in 5 years? No, because you need to have like a certain base build. You need to have flying cars flying around in, for example, Germany, before you can say, you know what, now we're going to start flying camper vans. So I do believe that it's a logical next step, but I think a lot needs to happen before we can start to see some flying homes.
To wrap up our discussion, let's have kind of a shorter questions. Which, sci-fi movies, scenarios featuring, futuristic cars do you think are more realistic today?
I automatically think back to the I, Robot, the movie with Will Smith. Yeah. I think it's set in 2030, 2034, so not that far anymore. And they had vehicles where that drive themselves, but as a driver you can choose to get the steering wheel and to drive yourself. Car-wise, I do see that happening in 10 years roughly.
Quality of the roads or quality of the vehicles?
I think I prefer quality of the vehicles first, because if you have a rugged vehicle and you have a vehicle that can withstand a lot, then you can go anywhere. No matter how good or bad the roads, but if you have a good vehicle, you can get through anything. Of course, I hope the roads will get up to par eventually. But if I have to pick one today, I would say quality of the car.
What type of the vehicle are you using right now? Electric, hybrid, or maybe really cool one with the mechanical gearbox?
I'm driving of course a G9 XPENG, which is a fully electric, our flagship model at the moment. So,
European or Chinese car for you personally?
Then you have to start asking, like, do I go with a dream car? Because then it's pretty easy, a Continental GT from Bentley, but that's not really realistic. If I would have to choose today for a company car, because I have a company car, I would choose a Chinese one, simply because of, one, the price, two, the advancement in technology, and three, they have pretty much every option as standard. If you go to a European car maker, it doesn't matter if it's Volkswagen, Audi, or one of the French brands, you have to add a lot of options before you get to the same level of finishing that you have with a Chinese brand.
For you personally again, more expensive car with a 10 years warranty, or much cheaper car which probably won't last for 10 years?
I would go for the first. I would go for the more expensive car. It depends on the difference in price. If it's 200,000 euros, then again, I will go for the cheaper option. But if you look at the bulk of the cars that are being ordered today, they're in the price range between, let's say, 12 and 30,000 euros. And there you have cars with 2 years warranty up until 10 years warranty. If you look at Toyota, I think they're the leader in warranty at the moment. They offer 10 years. I would feel more at ease if I buy one where I know, okay, everything is covered for 10 years. Because also, again, if you're reselling it after 5 years, you still have X amount of warranty you can give to the new owner of the vehicle.
So what do you think more beneficial for you as a owner? A brand new car from the dealership or a used second-hand car from a dealer?
From an economical point of view, is a second-hand car that makes most sense because you skip out on the VAT laws, etc., etc. So if I would have to go for one myself, I would go for an ex-demo car, which has driven for 6 months maybe, where the first bulk of the value loss is already covered by the dealership, and then you can drive a nearly new car for God knows how long. But buying a new car as a private customer, excuse my language, but that takes balls because you have no idea what the feeling of the market will be towards that vehicle. You have no idea will it depreciate as soon as I leave the lot. Did I buy something super rare and will it go up in value? So I would steer clear of that if I would have to buy one for myself.
Well, we talked about flying cars.
Yeah.
Do you imagine flying trains one day? Is that something that is feasible, do you think?
I think if you start to have flying trains, then you need to ask where is the difference between a flying train and a plane? Because they basically can take the same route, especially within Europe. So I don't think they will try and implement that with trains. If you look at Japan, for example, you have these high-speed trains that go the bullet trains. I think they will more look towards perfecting that concept than making them flying because...
So, Maxence, thank you very much for this interview. It was really fantastic to have you here and to have such an open discussion on many questions.
Definitely. Again, I want to thank you and I want to thank the great people from Andersen Lab as well for the time and the opportunity to come here. Again, I'm very passionate about my work and about the industry I'm in. So it's great that I got the opportunity to talk about it.